If you're a pistol or rifle shooter looking at Pilla lenses, you're probably looking at a catalog designed for the wrong sport, and you're about to spend more than $1,000 on the wrong size. So, today I'm cutting through the jargon to tell you exactly what works on the range, specifically for rifle and pistol shooters. Because for pistol and rifle shooters, choosing Pilla lenses is confusing for two very specific reasons. The first issue is information. Almost everything you find online about Pila is aimed at trap, skeet, and clay target shooters. And that kind of makes sense because Pila comes from that world. But clay shooting has a very specific visual need. You're trying to pick up a fast moving orange target against various types of backgrounds, sometimes even looking directly towards the sky. And those recommendations do not trans particularly well to pistol and rifle shooting. The second issue is options. While having options are great, the number of options that Pilla offers is like borderline ridiculous. They have more than 7 different series, each series in multiple sizes, up to 50 different lenses per platform, different temples, different materials, different colors, cases, inserts, accessories, all wrapped up in cryptic and confusing naming with tons of marketing jargon. So if you add it all up, you're looking at tens of thousands of possible combinations. And I have spent weeks testing different lenses, doing research, and talking with other professional shooters about their preferences. And I also want to say a big thank you to jbshooting.com for borrowing me everything that you see in this video here today, and for partnering with me in navigating this Pilla jungle. I do want to underline that I am not sponsored or affiliated by Pila, even if it might might look like it, and I have no incentive to get you to buy any specific option that I'm presenting here today. Let's start by narrowing things down. So today Pila offers 7 main platforms. You have Vista, Outlaw, Top Gun, Panther, Raptor, 500 series, and Hunting. And for our purposes here today, we can immediately eliminate most of these. Historically, the Outlaw series has been the choice for probably around 95% of all pistol and rifle shooters. A small number of people did end up with the Panther series, but with the introduction of the Vista, Pilla themselves has said that Vista is intended to replace the Panther over time. So realistically, that leaves us with 2 platforms. You have the Vista and you have the Outlaw. Both these platforms comes in 2 sizes. On the Outlaw, you have X6 and X7, and for some reason the naming makes absolutely no sense because the X6 is actually the bigger lens and the X7 is the narrower one. So if you're a bigger guy like me, it's very easy to think that the X6 is the right choice, especially when Pilla describes the X6 as average head size and X7 as narrow. Now, here's the reality. In all my years around competitive shooting, I've never met a pistol or rifle shooter running the X6 because these lenses are wide, like extremely wide. And personally, it feels a little bit like wearing, I don't know, ski goggles or something like that. And every competitive shooter I've spoken to that uses Pilla uses the X7, which is the narrow version. So unless you have a very specific preference or like a really wide face, the X7 is probably the right choice. The same logic applies to the Vista, but here the naming actually makes sense. You have the Vista Standard and you have the Vista Slim. And again, the Vista Standard is like huge. It covers almost your entire upper face and it very much gives that welding mask vibe. And that's probably why the majority will end up with the Vista Slim. Now we narrowed it down to 2 realistic options. You have Outlaw X7 and Vista Slim. So we're done, right? Or well, I can tell you, we're not even close to being done. So let's first talk about the differences between these 2 platforms. The main differences are shape, lens selection, and price. The Outlaw X7 is a proven platform. It's been like the gold standard for competitive shooting for more than a decade now. It offers a massive field of view, both vertically and horizontally, and it has by far the largest selection of lenses that Pilla make. The Vista Slim is Pilla's newest platform, and if you watch the marketing, it feels a little bit like a shampoo commercial with their light interference, vacuum effect, and spectral pigment acceleration.
Our first hair care system with Phloxin, L'Oreal's innovative molecule.
In practice, I would argue that it mostly comes down to fit and comfort. So the Vista is a little bit lighter in weight and it curves much more backwards to the sides, which again will result in less light leakage. It also sits a little bit closer to the eyes and your nose will be a little bit more visible in the Vista. The Outlaw X7 is very common, so chances are that someone at your range or your next match will have one, but the Vista is still relatively rare because it's new, but I probably predict that that will change going forward. One more thing to consider here is price. So the Vista is significantly more expensive than the Outlaw. So if you're unsure and price matters, just go with the Outlaw X7. Both these platforms uses temples that you are able to change out, and this allows you to have one set of temples that you just move in between the different lenses as you need them. The Outlaw has a little pin that provides leverage against two buttons where they kind of like snap on, and the Vista has a metal bar that slides on and off. And this does take a little bit of effort, especially when they're brand new like these, and it takes a little bit of technique. One important note is that the temples are platform specific, so make sure that you get the temples for the platform that you end up buying. Across both platforms, the main design are straight or forked. There's also like a cable style temple that curls behind the ear. I've personally never seen anyone using it for rifle or pistol shooting. Some shooters feel that the fork give a more secure hold, and personally I've never had any of the straight temples slip, even during intense movement, and most of them can be shaped quite significantly to wrap around your head. On Vista, the temple choice is pretty simple. You have straight, which is called dart, or you have forked, which is called, well, fork. They're both rubber coated and they come in 4 different colors. On the Outlaw X7, the options explode. You still have the straight and fork, but you also have a huge selection of different materials like carbon, metal, rubber, different lengths, different curves, different functionality, and you have a huge range of colors and finishes, custom options, textured options, and so on. You can also get variations of the fork called Mundial that has a little hinge here on the side that allows you to tilt the lens up and down. And what I like about all these options is that they're pretty flat behind the ear. And this matters a lot when you're wearing hearing protection for longer periods of use, because it helps avoid pinching your ear, especially if you also wear a cap. The Edge version is apparently handmade in a carbon-like finish, and it's probably the thinnest they have behind the ear, but it's also the one with the hardest edge. And because of the carbon, it loses much of its ability to be shaped and bent to your head, plus it's also a good $100 more expensive than the other ones. I would narrow it down to this. Outside preferences of straight versus forked, it mainly boils down to fashion and design preference. Whatever makes you look cool on social media. One practical consideration for the fork model is that if you have long hair, it might be annoying because it can catch the hair when you put them on. So for anyone with long hair, I would probably recommend the straight option. Now for the hard part, lenses. So you now have your platform, your size, your temples, which brings us to the hardest part, which is the lenses. There are more than 50 different lenses, and the names do look pretty random, but there is actually a logic here. The first number tells you about light transmission. So a 98 lets through 98% of light, making it almost clear and a good option for indoor and dark conditions. While a 10 lets through 10% of light, meaning that it will be very dark and suitable for bright sunlight. The exception to this number rule is when there is a P instead of a number. So the P stands for progressive, meaning that the lens will be darker at the top and then gradually get lighter towards the bottom. So I'm not saying nobody will prefer this option, but I've yet to see anyone using it in pistol and rifle shooting, and none of the lenses that I will be recommending today fit in the progressive category. The letters following the number tell you what type of coating or technology is used in the lens. You can think of it almost as an equalizer for music, but instead of tuning sound waves, we're talking about different wavelengths of light, where the light will either block or amplify certain colors. Here you have chroma shift marked with C, enhanced definition, ED, high contrast, HC, max orange MX, neutralizer N, infrared I, and you also have a ice coating, as Pilla calls it, which is the coating that Pilla puts on their lenses to repel water and help reduce fogging. So when I look at the lens called 9.5 CIED, I can decipher this into 9.5% of light transmission, and it has chroma shift, infrared, and enhanced definition. I could now start to explain in detail how enhanced definition apparently amplifies contrast by making darker colors darker and lighter colors lighter, or how chroma shift aims to change the way our eyes perceive certain colors. But the thing is, this is probably where Pilla again loses people, because of all the jargon and marketing terms.
L'Oreal Paris Fall Repair 3X with arginine that improves microcirculation.
What actually matters is finding the lens that works for the condition that you shoot in, based on real-world experience from competitive pistol and rifle shooters. So instead of drowning you in technology names and options, I'm going to give you concrete recommendations. I will divide the lenses into 3 different scenarios that you are likely to meet when you shoot, and where it makes sense to have suitable lenses to match that specific light requirement for each scenario. So for each category, I will recommend 3 lenses and explain the difference between them. So, one important note. This is very relative. So some people are very light sensitive and some are not. Some prefer a more contrast and vivid image, while others prefer things to be more neutral. And that's why I've taken great care not to base these recommendations only on my personal preference. I've spoken with some of the best pistol and rifle shooters in the world, and I will share their recommendations as well. And within the 3 lenses for each category, I have selected them so that they are likely to cover as broad of a scope of preferences as possible. The 3 lens scenarios would be indoor and dark conditions, mixed light, and bright conditions. First, the indoor and dark conditions. So this is for whenever you are shooting indoors or outdoors with very little available natural light. The first lens I will recommend is the 98AR, and this is a nearly fully transparent lens. The main purpose is to protect your eyes. It is a great option for anyone who prefers a minimal change to how their natural environment appears. It does have some anti-reflection coating, and some feel it gives a slight pop to colors, but overall it's not a very noticeable that you're actually wearing a lens. The second option for this category would be the 92CIL, which is called for Outlaw, and 92SL for Vista. And this lens has a little more greenish tint that filters out part of the red and blue colors, and this can help clean up the image, and it might help separate targets against the background. It makes darker colors darker and lighter colors lighter, but it will also give a slight greenish tint to white targets. Many shooters, including world champion Max Michel, prefers this lens for low lights environments. So the last lens I will be recommending in this specific category is the 80HC for Outlaw, which is called 78SHC for Vista. And while we're now looking at blocking around 20% of the light, this is still an excellent choice for poor lighting conditions. And because of the yellow color, some might even perceive it as a lighter option, even if it's really not. The yellow blocks out most of the blue light, and it amplifies contrast and colors, and it can improve the depth of field. So if you shoot outside on a gray weather day, you can actually feel that it's more vivid and more color around. Back in the day when I started shooting, which is like really long time ago, everyone wanted these yellow lenses for dark environments, but these days many seem to have moved a little bit away from that. Still, for those who prefer the feel of a yellow lens, this is absolutely still a strong option for this category. So the second option is mixed light. So this would typically be overcast weather, early or late in the day, changing light, or for me living in Norway, just a typical Norwegian summer day. And this is probably where people have the most different preferences, and also where the options are by far the largest. The first lens I will be recommending is the 52CIN for Outlaw, which is called 52SN for Vista. And this is a great lens that many shooters prefer in mixed light conditions. It will give a slight purple tint, but without feeling too artificial. Red, orange, and brown colors are prioritized, and targets will separate better from the background. It's great for changing weathers and environments, especially against green backgrounds, like if you shoot in a forest or with grass or trees. And it's a little bit less optimal in direct sunlight and in very gray environments, so if you shoot against concrete and gravel. The second option in this category is the 47CIHC for Outlaw, which is called 47SHC for Vista. And this is a high contrast lens designed for warm yellow tinted light filtered through clouds. And it adds a kind of like subtle red and purple tone that suppresses background colors and makes the steel and poppers stand out more clearly in an open field, gravel, or desert. This results in a crisp, high-definition image that feels very vivid without becoming overly dark or harsh. Now, the main difference between these two lenses is that the 47CIHC is the high contrast lens that you will feel pop colors more aggressively, while the 52CIN is more of a neutralizer that kind of calms things down and give a more balanced natural image. So both are great options for mixed light, and it comes down to if you prefer a more punchy, vivid image versus a more neutral, natural image. The last, or maybe second to last, lens that I will be recommending in this category is the 56CIBO for Outlaw, which is called 56SBO for Vista. And compared to the previous two, this lens kind of like sits clearly in the middle. It's more vivid and faster than the 52CIN, with a stronger color lift and a target pop. At the same time, it's more forgiving and adaptable than the 47CIHC. If you consider adding a fourth lens, I would probably also consider the 26CIED for Outlaw, which is called 26 SED for Vista. And this is also one of the options that world champion Max Michel selected in his kit. And it sits kind of between full direct light and medium light. And it's a very good option for the days where you have a lot of sun, but there's also a little bit of shade and you do not have strong reflective surfaces around. This lens has a brown and amber tint that reduces glare and it softens highlights, and it adds a clean definition without pushing contrasts too hard. And the result is a calm, comfortable image that is very easy on the eyes when you have mixed light. Now to the last scenario, which is bright conditions. So this would typically be direct sunlight from more or less clear skies, possibly with reflective surfaces like snow, or just in general stuff that tries to cook your eyeballs. So the first lens is 9.5 CIED for Outlaw, which is called 9.5 SED for Vista. And this is the darkest lens that Pilla offers, and it's a perfect choice for when you're shooting towards or in direct sunlight. It's great in blocking out light while at the same time not making the overall image feel way too dark. It makes some colors seem more vivid and slightly increases red, yellow, and orange, but at the same time it keeps the image quite natural. The second lens is the 18 CED for Outlaw and the 18 SED for Vista. And this lens gives the world a more brown and amber tint, and it increases contrasts. It blocks more of the blue and green colors, and it amplifies red, yellow, and brown. So it's definitely a bit more vivid, and things pop a little bit more with this lens than on the 9.5 CIED. It also lets in a little bit more light than the 9.5, and while it's still good for a bright summer day, it might strain your eyes if there are white snow or very reflective surfaces around, or if you're planning to wear it for a full day with full sun. For Vista, those would be the two options I would recommend in this category. And for Outlaw, there is actually one more option, and that would be the 10 CED. This is similar to 9.0 CIED in terms of how much light it blocks out, but it feels kind of different because the 9.5 CIED is more energy, vivid, and makes target pop harder, while the 10 CED quiet things down a little bit more. So it's more relaxed, more natural, and more warmer. So if you're going for Outlaw in bright sun, it comes down to whether you prefer a more vivid image or a calmer, more natural one. So up on the screen now, I will throw up a summary list of all the different lenses that I just talked about. So this is a good time to pause the video and screenshot this so that you can bring this when you want to try out the different lenses and see how they work with your eyes. Here the other day, a friend of mine stopped by, and that was Erik Johannes Larsen, and he also happens to be one of the best practical rifle shooters in the world, coming in second place in the IPSC World Championship in 2024, and also taking first place in pretty much every competition that he shoots. Like most professional and top shooters, he also uses Pilla, and I used the opportunity to ask him what lenses that he prefers, and he was very much aligned with the ones that I've talked about today. So Erik uses 4 lenses, and they are all part of the recommendations above. That includes the 98 AR for low light, the 52 CHC for mixed light, and he told me that originally he used the 18 CED for direct light, but after having attended a training camp where they spent full days shooting in direct sunlight with snow on the ground, his eyes got very tired, so he then added a 4th darker lens with the 10 CED. And I'm very glad to see that his recommendations align pretty much with the conclusions that I come up to in this video. For the Vista, Max Michel, who is also a world champion shooter, has put together a custom kit with 3 lenses that he recommends. You'll recognize the low light lens, which is the 92 SL in lime green, and he also has the 26 SED for direct sunlight, and this is the lens that I recommended as a 4th lens. He also has a mixed lens called 62 CICH in his kit, and personally I agree on the low light one, and I really like the 26 SED, but I think it's too light for direct sunlight, especially here in snow, and that's why I'd rather recommend this lens as a 4th option. Personally, I'm not a huge fan of the 62 CICH, as I find it way too vivid and it also lets in too much light for mixed lighting conditions. But I'm sure that if Max, world champion guy, likes it, I'm pretty sure that others will as well. And that brings me back to what I mentioned in the beginning, which is this is very relative. I mean, some people are more sensitive to light than others. People perceive colors differently and they have different preferences for how the image should look. What works for one person might be different for someone else. And that is why I suggest that you buy from a dealer like JB Shooting that allows you to buy the lens, try it, And then if you don't like it, you can send it back and trade it for something else. And while I'm quite sure that if you select one of the lenses that I recommend you here, you will be satisfied, you might also want to select something completely different among the 50 plus different options available. Since I was struggling to find a good guide covering all options that also summarizes key details behind each, together with JB Shooting, we created an Excel sheet that gives you a complete view of Outlaw and Vista lenses with a summary of each behind them. So this is a spreadsheet that you can download from the link in the description below. And if you want to pick different lenses than the ones that I talked about today, this will probably be a good help. So we're done, right? Well, not just yet. Let's talk about RX inserts. And this is when you use prescription lenses. So here you order a insert, and the insert is ordered for the specific series that you decide to go for. You can then either have Pilla make the lens according to your prescription by providing them with your eyeglass prescription, or just buy the insert and hand it to your local optician who can tailor it for you. Once that's done, you simply just snap it on the upper back of the lens. And the positive side of this solution is, even if you get double like glasses, is that you do not need prescription for every single color of lens that you decide to buy, which would probably just make it silly expensive. So Pilla does say that over time, the back side of the lens will get some marks where the frame touches the lens, but as long as the RX insert is on, you will obviously not notice this yourself. Well, I still think it's fair to call out, because if you were planning to sell lenses on the secondhand market later, that might have something to say. The final, and I promise now, final selection to make is what you want to store and transport your expensive lenses in. So here we have a few options as well, obviously. The first choice is this metal case, and the second choice would be a more semi-hard textile case. The benefit of the hard metal case is that it's extremely rugged. You could probably drive over this with a car, and it also looks kind of cool. The benefit of the semi-hard option is that it's more tailored to fit the actual lenses, so it will take up less space and it will also weigh less in your range bag. Personally, I prefer the semi-hard option, but many people does opt for the metal one. So once you've selected between metal or semi-hard, you need to select the size of the case. So if you selected the metal one, just go with the smaller option. That bigger case is more like something you keep in the car or at home if you have an unhealthy addiction to buying different Pilla lenses. If you go with the semi-hard option, I would personally choose the smaller version for the Outlaw, and I would probably go for the larger option for the Vista. The reason is that the small case would easily fit one assembled Outlaw and 2 to 3 extra lenses, which is what probably most people will go for. While the Vista, on the other hand, the small case will only fit one assembled Vista and there's maybe one additional lens. So that's why me, who end up choosing the Vista, is going for the larger case. If you enjoy in-depth reviews and shooting-based content like this here today, please hit the subscribe button below. I don't post very often, but when I do try to provide quality, detail, and in-depth content. And again, a big thank you to jbshooting.com for borrowing me everything that you've seen in this video today, and thank you for watching.